it's driving me crazy. And I hate to see her doing this because it's unproductive and I'm just frustrated. I want to know how to handle it mentally myself. Like,
Yeah.
know that I'm not really in control of the situation. And so, how I can be more mentally healthy about it without going nuts.
Yep, I want to do the one that says it's unproductive. I'm just going to drop you into inquiry here. So the question one, which is just a yes or no, it's unproductive. Is it true? Is that true? It's unproductive, yes or no?
Yes.
Can you absolutely know that that's true?
Yes, I can.
So it's tricky when we have a word like unproductive, which is a value laden, a judgment word. So you can't even go and give what is your definition of unproductive? Could you just briefly tell me what that is?
Well, I've asked her, so she's supposed to be working on some other skills over the summer because she's got this job that she's not efficient at that I've been going with her to. So I've been wanting her to learn how to be more efficient at doing other things. And she's just spending her whole day doing this after she does her chores in the morning.
Okay, so your definition of the word unproductive, though, means what? Just the definition of the word
That
unproductive.
she's spending an entire day doing something that is not beneficial.
Okay, so even beneficial is a judgment, is a value laden word. But yeah, so we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but it really is interesting that one person's definition of unproductive or beneficial could be really different than another. So that's why it's a little hard to do the work on a judgment. That's something that on a judgment word like that. So you have to get real clear about what your definition of it means. At this point, I almost think productive for you would be her doing almost anything other than this, but maybe not.
Very true, Sean. That's very true. So,
Yeah. So, but all right. So, does she think it's unproductive?
no, she's got OCD. It's her OCD. So,
But she thinks what she's doing has a purpose and is productive and is important,
yes. Mhm.
right? So you can see how these definitions of productivity vary greatly just between the two of you. But even with your own definition, however it comes out, we can still question and do the work with that. So and I like it when you get two yeses. I like when people are honest. Sometimes people are like, well, no, I can't absolutely know it's true. And it's like you're going, yes, hell yes, it's true. It's flat out unproductive. There's no arguing. So that's when you get two yeses, is when you know you really need to do the work on it because you can't see it any other way. Um,
Exactly.
so, question three, how do you react? What happens when you believe the thought? Let's find a situation, like, is there a time today when you looked at her and felt totally exasperated? I mean, it might be happening so much that it's hard to find a situation, but pick one at a certain time of day, today, yesterday, something that's clear in your memory.
Yeah, I got one.
Okay. So you look at her and your mind goes, what she's doing is completely unproductive. That's just one of your judgments or your fears related to all this. But
And
how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought that what she's doing is unproductive?
I get incredibly worried about her future. I get sad. She's 18 and she's got these goals and I don't see her fulfilling the goals of, you know, getting into coding after she gets out of high school or graphic design because she cannot stop herself from her OCD habits.
She can't what herself?
Stop herself from her OCD habits. And we've known in the last year or two that she can't finish her coding assignments or graphic design assignments because her OCD is getting in the way.
So how do you react? Anything else about what happens? How do you feel when you believe the thought what she's doing is completely unproductive?
Um, Not only sad, but completely not in control and um, desperate, um, lost, frustrated, just
And I know you're not alone, where people out there listening have situations where they're very concerned about someone or a child of their own even, and feel that they have so little sway over that person or situation. Do you feel that anywhere in particular in your body?
well, I don't sleep and usually have a headache and just my blood pressure's up and my anxiety is up.
So you said anxiety, so that is a manifestation of fear, but fear wasn't one of the ones that you came. You did say worried about her future, and worry and anxiety are both forms of fear. But if we really just bring it right down to fear, what do you feel that in your body? You feel fear?
I do. I mean, she's got a traumatic brain injury, she's got multiple disabilities, and I am very anxious about her future. Um, she's got these goals for herself, and if she doesn't realize them, which she's going down a path where she's not going to get to do what she wants to do because she's not got her OCD under control. I'm just, I, you know, I don't know. I'm sad. You know,
Yeah, I hear that. And are you scared for yourself and your husband too? That she will be under your roof, playing with her markers for the rest of her life, or what is?
yeah,
Um,
well, yeah, that could possibly be. My husband and I both have, you know, hopes of traveling and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not necessarily, I'm not as worried about that as I am about her not being. She's so determined and stuff, and then she's got these dreams for herself, and her self-esteem is so low now. She's suffering from huge depression and anxiety, and I just worry that she's not going to be able to do what she wants to do because she's not applying what she's learning in therapy.
right. And I know there are a lot of other layers of it, but if we stay with just the consequence of believing that her doing this over and over again is unproductive,
Yeah.
this is kind of a different question that some of you haven't heard me ask. It can kind of fall under question 3 or 4. What do you fear would happen if you were able to drop your judgment that this is unproductive and all the fears that go along with it? Not who would you be without it, but what's keeping you holding on to it? What do you fear would happen if you really lost that judgment completely?
Hmm. I'd actually be grateful if I didn't have that judgment. I mean, that would be a really beneficial thing for me to be able to drop that because I would have a better relationship with her if that's what I did.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good to have found that. Sometimes we find it's worth asking that question because there's an agenda that's keeping us holding on to something. And so it's a little harder to let go of that thought because it's actually, we think it's accomplishing something. And in your case, you sound very open to finding some other way to see things. So who would you be? And yes, I know there's all the other thoughts too, but who would you be looking at her as she's in that situation today or whenever you chose doing the marker thing without, if your brain could not think a thought like it's unproductive, it's not beneficial, it's not moving in the direction of her goals, everything that's involved in that definition of unproductive, who would you be if you couldn't have a thought like that
Would
or
be
a
a much
story?
I would be a much better mom, and I would be a much happier person for sure. And I wouldn't have my own depression wouldn't be so bad for sure.
Yeah, and again, you've used kind of a judgment on yourself there. I would be a better mom, meaning with the thought. It sounds like you're saying you're a worse mom.
Yeah,
And
well, yeah,
so,
I do kind of feel like that. You know that from my time with you.
yeah, but if your definition then of being a better mom is accepting her as she is, not going into, doom and gloom projections, being a happier person, not dealing with your own level of depression and maybe something about not having an agenda for her that she has to meet up all the time. Um, so again, so that's in that situation. And then when you're just going about your life how does that feel if you didn't have, or laying in bed trying to fall asleep? How would that be without this thought that what she's doing is leading down this path to nowhere, unproductive, not beneficial, not ever going to help her get to her goals?
I would
You
be
would-
thinking about things that I really love to do and what makes me happy and what makes my husband happy and doing things that we did together, um, both as a family and with my husband, and really embracing and being happy about those things and looking forward to those things.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, and being the one that sets the tone for all that. So many people in this room know what happened when we did enough work that they realized, here's the relationship I want. I'm not going to wait for the other person to create that relationship. I'm going to set the tone for the relationship I want and live it and model it for others. They may or may not come along, but if I'm waiting for everybody else to change before I get to have this joy, this connection, this looking forward to life, this getting to know, I mean, you and your husband and your daughter sounded like you bonded a lot over the years and overcame some really big challenges with her, but had a lot of togetherness and fun and plans together, and she has her plans. It's not like she's totally unmotivated. And you may be the one that believes in her no matter what. But it's hard when you've got these stories going in yourself. And where you're in the right place in this group to be able to question that your mind has come up with definitions, even if they're her definitions of how her life should look and work. And one of the biggest things I think I passed to my daughter and that other people here, what we can share is the idea of we make lemons into lemonade. We trust what shows up, even if we thought isn't what we thought it was going to be. It might be taking us to an even better place than our mind had imagined. And that would be your work to get to that place about yourself, your family, and her, because you kind of can't fake it. And right now, it's very conditional. It's very, she's only going to get where she needs to go if she stops doing blank or if this happens in this time frame. Turn it around. It's unproductive.
Okay, so remind me. So I'm a little bit slow at this.
Yes, that's fine. Don't, everybody takes a little learning curve with this. And this one doesn't have an other object in it. If we had rewritten it to say what she is doing is unproductive or what
Okay,
she's
so
doing to
I can
herself,
say
but
so
just it's unproductive.
I can say Brianna is being unproductive by making traces with her marker.
Right, but I think we can also just go with it as it is because it was
Okay.
a really clear statement from your mind, and when we only have a statement like that that's just a belief or it's aimed at you and there's no one else. The two turnarounds, the first one, well, they can go in either order, but I like the first one is to the opposite. And the second one is to the thinking. So if you were to say it's unproductive, turn it around to the opposite, which is when you negate the verb. So,
It's productive.
right. And maybe you even want to start with it's not unproductive. Maybe you can't yet go all the way to productive,
Okay.
but either one, which would work for you. Can you find any examples of how maybe it's not unproductive?
Oh boy, Sean, that's challenging. Can
You
you
want
give
to ask the peanut gallery for some help?
y'all how is it not unproductive?
Can you give us any examples, anyone, of how what she's doing? Let's go ahead. We'll go on either way into the could be ultimately productive. How
Hi,
could that possibly be as true or truer that what she's doing is productive?
are
Hi,
you asking the
friends.
peanut gallery?
Yes.
I am. I see Kaylee started to say something, and Anita might have an
Go
idea.
ahead, Anita.
Oh, well, I was just gonna, thanks, Kaylee, you're so cute. I was gonna say, maybe it's soothing for her. Maybe it is her escape from thinking about all the things that she knows that she should be doing, or you know, maybe it's just her escape mechanism
Yeah.
from her own anxiety over her future. I don't know.
Yeah,
Just a
for
thought.
obviously she thinks there's something productive about getting those numbers on paper next to the color, and it must serve some purpose within her mind. So that's one example. Kaylee?
Well, I am a designer, and so I thought it might be somewhat comforting, Dina, that I always take my markers and all my pens, and I sit down with blank pieces of paper and I draw out what the pen name is in that ink so that I know what it looks like when I go to use it in art later. And I'll do it on different pieces of paper, and I will do it on like in different like so I'll use pens, I also use alcohol markers, I'll use different types of paints. I'm a mixed media artist, so any kind of mixed media, I want to test out how it looks like from that designer side. And so that's actually a really practical, like productive thing that I do for work. I'll put a show on and just sit there and it helps me learn the colors because they don't come out the way that they are shown on the marker itself. It's almost like it's like a guessing game if you were to just grab a marker without having some kind of reference. And
Gotcha.
most of those marker kits actually come with a pre-done reference page for you to color in because they know it's nearly impossible to illustrate the color in a piece of plastic like it is with ink that sinks into the page, or if it's like an ink that sits on top of the page, that's going to be, even if it's the same color ink, it's going to show up differently. So it actually can be productive from a designer standpoint, if that's at all helpful.
Yeah, and that's very helpful. This kit that she got is from a long time ago, so it may have had that in there, but it doesn't now.
I
But
threw mine away because it came on the crappiest piece of paper possible that wasn't indicative of what I was using anyway. So I
right.
threw mine away and then I got really nice quality paper and then some medium quality paper and did it on both of those. And it shows up differently on different paper. So Yeah.
Right.
And then I
Well,
just did all my pens last weekend, which is just kind of funny. I did all my ink pens. They're all black. Like they're just different thicknesses, but by looking at it, I can't really tell how thick it actually is. So having a reference is super helpful for me.
you can even
Right.
have different shades of black.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that it's just so fun to work in groups like this because from my perspective, I had some turnaround examples, but darn it. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it went away. So anyway, but it could be that her idea that she's going to be a coder or something. Well, this thing she's doing is a kind of coding, but maybe she's going to do something way more visual or related to art or related to color that feeds her soul, where you want somebody a little obsessive. You just never know. So it could be productive from that perspective that you see that this is something she's good at, she's interested in, it serves a purpose. So, so just to piggyback onto Kaylee's, then I had one. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, absolutely.
Sometimes, well, in science in general, a result that isn't what you thought you wanted in research is just as productive as a result that is what you thought you wanted. An experiment that goes awry shows you what didn't work, as Edison will say in his 1,000 experiments to get to a light bulb. Only one of them actually landed on the ultimate success. We have a light bulb, all the rest were, quote, failures. And so if we're using those definitions, but I also think to give her, the people that are treating her and you guys an opportunity to see that what they were doing hasn't moved her in that direction. It may be that you need to take measures like keep the pens away from her for certain amounts of the day, or that you work with medication because if she's still this obsessive and she can't get to the point where she wants to actually be obsessive about something else and be efficient at it. I've seen those kind of medications more than a lot of other medications. The OCD ones can be pretty effective with people. So it might be productive where we have to go here before we can figure out what's next.
Yeah, this is great stuff, y'all. Really appreciate your input. I've written your comments down, really helpful. Um, I do think keeping the pens away for a certain part of the day also, Shawn, is important. She's got some other things that she needs to accomplish. So, um,
Well, and if an obsession is like an addiction in some ways, where as long as you're in the presence of it, you can't overcome the pull of it. But if you're not around it, then you're able to focus on other things. So
right.
that's in some ways why certain treatments for addiction are 100% cold turkey. You don't even let yourself engage even a little bit because you can't do a little without going over into that,
Right. The
you
the
know.
OCD like shows up in a lot of places, and just start we just started a new medicine about a week or two ago. So the first medicine didn't work, and it made her very anxious. So um,
Right.
yeah, we're
And
still
it might be, I know this was just one of your examples. I know it manifests in other ways. And Kaylee wrote in the comments, a friend of mine has OCD and is in coding, and their
oh,
ability to spot patterns is very helpful in that field.
Haley, I
So,
love you. I've got to talk to you offline.
yep, no, you and Kaylee can definitely be in touch. She said yes. And because if you can kind of engage the obsessive nature of it, people who like to have everything in straight lines and they decide to become an accountant, where you capitalize on what can be, get in the way in certain situations can be a gift in others. So then, yeah, well, I'm glad. And the other part, though, of this turnaround can be really helpful is the turnaround to the thinking, where instead of saying it is unproductive or whatever the thing is that you're focused on, she is that, you say my thinking. So that turnaround would be, my thinking is unproductive. My
Okay.
thinking about her level of productivity is unproductive. There are productive
Okay.
things that you might do, and you're coming up with some of them now, but just the thinking that where you're a little obsessive about, you might say about, oh my God, this isn't going where it needs to go. It's not productive. It's not beneficial. It's not efficient. I mean, if you think about the changes she's been through, just, coming out of, is she done with high school or with her disability? Will
No,
she be
she's got one
continuing?
more year. She has one more year.
Okay, but still, you've come into summer, this whole chemical changes and whatever is really bringing out the OCD. You're making changes in yourself. There's a lot going on, and with this treatment, that, without your judgment that this is unproductive, you can just see yourself in a process of learning what's going on here, getting treatment, what's working, what's not working is just as important to find out as what's working. So without your judgment, without that thinking, so you can say, wow, my thinking about unproductivity is very unproductive. It's not getting me anywhere either,
Right.
or her. So any other
I
examples
have to
of
share
how?
something real quick. For
Sure.
I think the group would appreciate this, but we just started family therapy a couple weeks ago, and Brianna said to the therapist, "My mom has been changing, and this is due to me going to the retreat and starting this program." And she goes, "I don't know what to do with that. It's too weird. I don't know what to do because it's not what I am used to." So,
You're not so predictable, huh? But yeah, I mean that whole Dance of Anger book that talks about how you do this, I do that, you say this, I react that way. The only one you can really work on changing is yourself, and you don't know then how that will affect the other person. And sometimes they'll escalate into what's called a change back reaction. Even if nobody liked the old patterns, the brain wants to put it back the way it was. So,
we're
but
so
that's
smart about
it's
that.
neat.
That's exactly what happened with her.
That's neat that she noticed the difference. I think they are, as you said, Dina, she's already trying to prove to herself that she's okay. And so the more we are able to hold them, be the one that trusts that they are okay within the scope of who they are in this moment, that I always say egos need something, and love says, oh, look at you there you are, coloring with markers, you know. And what do we do next, but where you're conveying that worried look or that whatever, and maybe let her solve the problem of how many hours a day does she think she wants to put in on that versus on her coding work. And let's just take the markers off the table for X amount of time every day, um, or put it in the direction of, you're going to learn about something related to art or something where you do this as part of a profession, whatever. You'll get there, but just to also let her have input. She's not blind to some of the things that are going on, and that if you communicate faith in her to figure it out, that requires you overcoming your own fears and misgivings and doubts. I think that was a really courageous and wonderful piece of work, Dina. And sometimes just working one I know mind thought, like the thought it's unproductive, can really show us a lot. You probably put that judgment on yourself as well. Um,
That was incredibly helpful, and I'm glad that I um, shouted out.
yes.
I've got something to work on because that was really helpful, and I really appreciate everybody's responses in the group because it was beautiful and it's given me a lot to think about and to um, try to work on with myself. So
Yeah, and who hasn't had, I mean, I know you're up against a lot here, but who hasn't had fears for the future of their children not being able to realize their dreams? So it was a very relatable thing. Who hasn't had the judgment, it's unproductive? It's probably one of the biggest, most common judgments we have on ourselves in the US. Productivity, there's so much focus on it.